Backing up and archiving data. Backing up data. Data stored in files is very valuable. It has taken a long time to input to the system and often is irreplaceable. If a bank loses the file of customer accounts because the hard disk crashes, then the bank is out of business. It makes sense to take precautions against a major disaster. The simplest solution is to make a copy of the data in the file, so that if the disk is destroyed, the data can be recovered. This copy is known as a backup. In most applications, the data is so valuable that it makes sense to produce more than one backup copy of a file. Some of these copies will be stored away from the computer system in case of something like a fire which would destroy everything in the building. The first problem with backing up files is how often to do it. There are no right answers, but there are wrong ones. It all depends on the application. An application that involves the file being altered on a regular basis will need to be backed up more often than one that is very rarely changed. What is the point of making another copy if it hasn't changed since the previous copy was made? A school pupil file may be backed up once a week, whereas a bank customer file may be backed up hourly. The second problem is that the backup copy will rarely be the same as the original file because the original file keeps changing. If a backup is made at 9 a.m. and an alteration is made to the file at 9:05 a.m., if the file now crashes, the backup will not include the change that has been made. It is very nearly the same, but not quite. Because of this, a separate file of all the changes that have been made since the last backup is kept. This file is called the transaction log and it can be used to update the copy if the original is destroyed. This transaction log is very rarely used. Once a new backup is made, the old transaction log can be destroyed. Speed of access to the data on the transaction log is not important because it is rarely used, so a transaction log tends to use serial storage of the data and is the best example of a serial file if an examination question asks for one. Archiving data. Data sometimes is no longer being used. A good example would be in a school when pupils leave. All their data is still on the computer file of pupils, taking up valuable space. It is not sensible to just delete it. There are all sorts of reasons why the data may still be important. For instance, a past pupil may ask for a reference. If all the data has been erased, it may make it impossible to write a sensible reference. Data that is no longer needed on the file but may be needed in the future should be copied onto long-term storage medium and stored away in case it is needed. This is known as producing an archive of the data. Schools normally archive data for 7 years before destroying it. Note, archived data is not used for retrieving the file if something goes wrong. It is used for storing little used or redundant data in case it is ever needed again, so that space on the hard drive can be freed up.